13 women murdered, 7 others attacked, and for 5 years the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe, well, he just terrified Britain.
He did. And he somehow slipped through the net, didn't he? Despite being interviewed multiple times by the police.
Multiple times. That's the thing that just keeps coming back. How did that happen?
Exactly. And that's what we're digging into here. We've looked at the information, the case files, trying to sort of pin down the key things that let him carry on for so long.
Right. Not just telling the story, but figuring out what went wrong, what we can learn.
Precisely. Extracting the important insights from, well, a really tragic sequence of events.
It all started, didn't it, back in October 1975, October 30th.
That's the date. Leeds. Wilma McCann's body was found just after midnight.
She was only 28, a mom, 4 kids.
Yeah, and the attack itself was just horrific. Struck twice with a hammer, stabbed 15 times.
15 times.
It was brutal. And that was his first known killing. But, at that point, nobody realized the scale of what was starting. It was a murder, yes, but not yet seen as part of a series.
And the man behind it, Peter Sutcliffe, born 1946, Bingley, West Yorkshire.
Working class background, Catholic family.
People described him as quiet, maybe a bit withdrawn.
Yeah, quiet, awkward, kept himself to himself mostly. But underneath that, there were, well, some really disturbing signs early on.
Like what?
Things like an obsession with prostitutes, voyeurism. There was even an incident where he was found hiding in a graveyard, apparently intending to attack women.
Wow. Okay, so red flags were there.
In hindsight, yes. Big ones. He dropped out of school, worked various low-wage jobs, eventually became a lorry driver.
And that job, the lorry driving, that turned out to be significant, didn't it?
Oh, definitely. It gave him mobility, for one. He could cover a lot of ground.
Right. Across West Yorkshire and beyond.
Exactly. And it gave him time away, less scrutiny, perhaps. A degree of anonymity. He sounds mundane, but it really facilitated things for him.
It's chilling how ordinary circumstances can enable such awful things.
It really is.
And then there's the contrast. His wife, Sonia, apparently saw him as, a loving husband.
Well, friends thought maybe odd, but ultimately harmless.
How do you square that circle, the loving husband and the monster?
It's incredibly difficult. That ability to compartmentalize, to wear a mask of normality while hiding such violence, it's deeply unsettling, and it makes detection so much harder.
So after Wilma McCann in 75, the attacks continued.
Relentlessly. Over the next 5 years, the list just grew. Emily Jackson in 1976.
Lured into his van, wasn't she? Hammer and screwdriver attack.
Yes. Then Irene Richardson in 77, found in a park, horrific injuries. And then also 77, Jane McDonald.
And Jane McDonald. She's different.
She was only 16 years old. And crucially, she wasn't a sex worker.
Right. That must have changed things.
Massively. It shattered that early narrative, the one some media pushed. And maybe the police initially thought that he was only targeting sex workers.
Suddenly, no woman felt safe.
Exactly. The fear became widespread. Indiscriminate violence. It really hit home then.
And the police response, they ramped things up.
Hugely. It became the biggest manhunt in British history. Over 250 officers involved at its peak. Files running to, like, 1 million pages.
1 million pages. And yet...
And yet, he was still out there. Still attacking.
Which brings us back to those interviews. 9 times, you said.
9 separate times he was interviewed by police. And released every single time.
What were they missing?
Well, it points to some major issues in the investigation. Tunnel vision is probably part of it. Focusing too much on one theory, maybe?
And wasn't there that hoax? The tape?
Ah, yes. The Wearside hoax. That was absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
And devastatingly misleading.
Someone sent tapes, letters, pretending to be the Ripper.
Exactly. Claiming responsibility. And the key thing was the voice on the tape had a very distinct Jordy accent from the Northeast.
I remember hearing about that line, "I'm Jack. I see you are still having no luck catching me." Chilling.
It was. And because the hoaxer seemed to know some details, the police gave it, well, perhaps too much credibility.
So they focused on finding someone with a Jordy accent.
They became heavily focused on it, yes. To the point where, reportedly, they started downplaying or even dismissing eyewitness accounts, mentioning a local Yorkshire accent.
Sutcliffe's accent.
Sutcliffe's actual accent. So this hoax, this deliberate misdirection, it allowed him to keep going while the police were, frankly, looking in the wrong place.
And more women died because of it.
3 more women were killed while the police were focused on the hoaxer. It's a terrible consequence of that mistake.
So how did they finally get him? It wasn't directly for the murders, was it?
No. Ironically, it was January 2nd, 1981. He was pulled over for having false number plates on his car.
False plate, something almost routine.
Almost. But during questioning about the car, something seemed off. He kept asking to go to the toilet. Repeatedly.
Which made the officers suspicious.
He did. They searched the toilet cistern, found a knife hidden there. Then they found another knife in his coat, plus a rope, a hammer, the toolkit of his attacks, essentially.
And then he confessed.
It took 2 days of questioning, but yes, he confessed. To 13 murders, 7 attempted murders.
Did he say why? What was the motive?
His stated reason was, well, he claimed God told him to kill prostitutes, that it was a divine mission.
A divine mission?
But the detectives who interviewed him, they described someone cold, calculated, remorseless, not someone lost in religious delusion necessarily.
He was convicted in May 1981, 20 life sentences.
That's right. But then later, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, moved to Broadmoor, the high-security psychiatric hospital.
That caused a lot of anger, didn't it? Families, the public?
Understandably, yes. Many felt he was faking it, trying to get out of a normal prison sentence.
Was he ever moved back?
Yes, eventually. In 2016, they deemed him stable enough to transfer back into the general prison population.
And he died there?
He died in prison, yes. November 13th, 2020. Complications from COVID-19 and heart problems. He was 74.
And there wasn't exactly an outpouring of grief?
No. No public mourning. Just a reflection of the immense harm he caused.
His legacy. It's fear, obviously, but also failure, isn't it? Systemic failure.
Absolutely. Beyond the awful suffering of the women he attacked, over 20 women directly impacted the case, just threw a harsh light on the misogyny within policing back then.
How the victims were sometimes described.
Dismissed as just prostitutes, that labeling, that dehumanization, it was appalling.
And dangerous. It created a false sense that, respectable women were safe.
Exactly. And it skewed the whole investigation. A review in 2021 called the police response deeply flawed and steeped in bias. It highlighted that dehumanization. We have to remember their names, their lives.
So looking back, Sutcliffe wasn't some kind of supernatural evil. He was human.
A human being, yes.
Yes.
With dark, dangerous obsessions. But crucially, he exploited weaknesses, biases in the system.
And his ability to do that for so long, the consequences were just devastating.
They were. And even though he's gone, the pain lingers. The lessons remain.
What are those key lessons, do you think? What should we take away?
Well, recognizing red flags, for one.
Yeah.
Acting on them. Valuing every single victim, regardless of their background or lifestyle. That's absolutely critical.
And the fact that this kind of evil can hide behind a seemingly ordinary face.
That too. The banality of evil sometimes.
Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe for you listening. What underlying attitudes, what biases in society back then allowed this to happen, allowed justice to be delayed for so long?
And maybe more importantly, how do we learn from those failures? How do we make sure systems don't break down like that again? That's the question we need to keep asking.